tonight's panel actually is a multi-generational, multi-sector panel of folks who live all over the county of Marin. Our first panelist that I'll introduce before we head to questions is Melanie Page, who's lived in many parts of the county, but currently a Novato resident. I'm sure she'll tell you, and is one of the founding members and one of the ones who supports many of us as African-American employees as we come into the organization at the County of Marin. And Noah Griffin will be with us, who is an inspirational singer, actor, partner, community servant, and leader on key topics. Otis Bruce, who many of you know is an assistant district attorney, and actually very recently has moved to an incredible position to focus on supporting equity while he supports justice here, as he has for quite a while. Sophia Martin, if many of you read our newsletter, is an activist and an author. We are so happy to have her and her voice leading us. Amber Allen-Pierson, a community activist first, as well as a wellness coordinator at TAM. And Paul Austin, whose work during the pandemic, before the pandemic, and in our communities to give voice to young people and adults across the county, and maybe even broader, he may tell you about that, is with us. So what you see in front of you, thank you, Paul, thank you to the folks who've given a little wave. What you see in front of you is a multitude of ways of showing up as people who live in Marin, making change, and also living lives of joy and bringing joy to others and building for the future. So I would like to start tonight's panel with Melanie Page. And then we'll go around a little bit. But the first question is, what about life in Marin are you passionate about? Do you love, do you care about? And how does that bring you to this moment in your activism, in your community building, in your love for people across communities? Melanie, please start us off.
All right, that's a very good question. And I had actually emailed Ramona saying, I don't really understand that question, but because I'm born and raised here, so mine might be a little different, me and Paul. I don't know who else was born and raised here, but wow, let me see. That's a very good question. My passion is to, wow, that's a really good question. Is to bring people together. My grandmother was an activist. My mother was an activist. And so it's in my blood. Mm-hmm. It's something that it's my passion. I mean, I don't like injustices of any kind. I've been this way all my life. And I speak up on everything. So I don't know. Did I answer your question?
You did. You said you are passionate about community and connecting, and that you have a long history here in Marin County, lifelong history here in Marin County.
I mean, it's just me. I mean, that's just what I do. It's in my blood.
So Paul, Melanie referenced you. Tell us about your passions, also a lifelong resident, but also someone who's lifting up young people, I see, on a number of tough topics.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's number one. And my passion falls with the young people. It always have been and always will be. That's number one. But I love Marin. I mean, Marin is a beautiful place, right? Like we have water, we have wonderful trees and outdoor space, but it is about creating for those who can't create for themselves, right? Being able to be a voice and stand up when other people can't. So I'm super passionate here in Marin just to see change. I think now is the time more than ever. And so, I grew up here. I consider myself a third generation Marin Cityite. And so that's where my passion falls. It falls right here with my city, but also it falls with other folks that's looking to help create change. It's a lot of like-minded people here in Marin. And so, as we push for change and more development within our communities, it's a beautiful thing. And so, but my number one passion is for kids, to make sure kids have what they need as they grow up.
Thank you. Sophia, you are a strong leader and your youth is just added to that. Tell us about what you're passionate about. I loved the article that you wrote for the newsletter.
Yeah, well, I think overall, I'm still very much discovering my own identity. I'm only 17, gonna be 18 on Sunday. And yeah, I'm very excited. But growing up in Marin, as a Black woman, as a biracial woman, it's definitely hard to come to terms with your identity a lot of the times, especially when you're in these very predominantly white spaces. So what I wanted to do with my blog and my work with groups like SOAR and BIPOC of Marin and Youth for Racial Equity is really just empowering Black youth in Marin, and especially Black women, to be confident and proud of their racial identity, despite them maybe not being in a lot of spaces where they get to share those experiences.
Thank you so much. Otis, you have been the first in many, many things in our community. Tell us about what you're passionate about in your career here and your living here.
Well, thank you, Chantel, and thank you, Marin County Free Library and Kumeya for hosting this event. I'm an immigrant to Marin. I'll use that word. I mean, I came here, I migrated here, I traveled here. I had no family, friends, relatives, network, connections, mentors. I had nothing here. I knew no one in this county when I came here. No one invited me here. I just made a decision to leave Oakland and come to Marin County to pursue a career. I'm very passionate about family. I'm extremely passionate about family, community, service to others, justice, and I appreciate the love of that people have for the environment.
Thank you. Amber, it's great to see you. Tell us about what you're passionate about here in Marin.
Thank you. I love the youth. I'm passionate about the youth experience, particularly how Sophia described it. I am concerned about the experience for so many Black and Brown young people transferring and being in a culture that has so much homogeny and so much wealth, and how that internalizes confusion. I'm also a transplant from Oakland, but my father has lived here my whole life. So I've always traversed between Oakland and Marin and have a deep relationship, but living here has been hard because I'm used to a lot more Blackness. So I'd say as it exists, I love the parks, I love the aesthetics, and I love Marin City. And I love my family there, and I love the youth and the relationships that I've developed with the families there.
Thank you. And Noah, before I say a few words, we would love to hear what inspires you and what you're passionate about in Marin as both an artist and an activist.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. My activism, I guess, started off early. I got it from my parents. My parents were being paid 47% of what white teachers were being paid in Florida. So they fought for the equalization of Black and white teacher salaries with the help of Thurgood Marshall. They were banned from teaching in Florida. So Daddy came out here in 1944 with my mother to establish the first West Coast regional office of the NAACP. And he established the first NAACP in Marin City in 1944. My mother taught here in 1955. I grew up in San Francisco, where I was the first African American in the San Francisco Boys Chorus to solo an opera. We broke the color line. I played Huckleberry Finn in a musical. By the time I was in high school, I did a paper on one of San Francisco's problems in competition with all the other student body presidents. I did mine on de facto segregation in the San Francisco school district, an issue which was not tackled until 20 years later. I went to an HBCU at Fisk University, and I marched with John Lewis and went on to Harvard Law. Came back here and have been in, either worked or lived in Marin since for the last 45 years or so. Raised all my children here. My major passions have been, well, first of all, I combined with Amber's dad, Carrie, to take the Black jockeys off the streets of Tiburon. Then we had a 22-year struggle to change the name of the Dixie School District. I sit on a number of boards currently. I'm on the Diversity and Inclusion panel over in Tiburon too, and we took a look at hiring the first a police chief that a little more sensitive to the issues that are going on there, and head of Rotary. And I sit on the Buck Family Fund, so we make sure that monies go to the poor and the needy of Marin County. And I write about various issues in the IJ, many of which concern the Black community, most recently of which there's a movement with Paul Austin leading it, to make Marin City an actual city. And there was a wonderful piece done earlier this week by Pam Moore on Channel 4. And I plan on writing about that. Hopefully I'll be getting in touch with you soon, Paul, and we can work a little further, and Amber, we can look a little further on that. So that's just kind of a summation of and lastly, I'm on the National Commission, America 250, that takes care of the, we're one of 16 citizens that takes a look at the events leading up to and including the 250th anniversary of the country. And I'm making certain that the Black perspective is on that commission. So that's a little what I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a wonderful segue as we think about connections and connecting over time. Noah didn't mention this, but his mother was also a founder of a women's club in San Francisco that covers both Marin and San Francisco and San Mateo. And there's a picture of Noah at about 5 years old in San Francisco that when I was walking there and joining the club, that was available. And I think the history that you talk about of African Americans across the country and across, the Bay Area is important.
You're not talking about Jack and Jill, are you?
Yes. Yes. As well as the real idea of how do you connect to community? Melanie mentioned being a lifelong Marinite. I didn't grow up here. I live in San Anselmo now, but I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, a really different place from here, culturally in many, many ways, and certainly in terms of, African Americans and things like that. And the connections to history made so much sense to me, which is why that picture and other things, and the embrace that I felt as a transplant here from Marin City by folks who I didn't grow up with. But how do you make connections in Marin in general, connect to African Americans, connect across cultural backgrounds, genders, gender identities? How do some of you do that? Why don't we have a bit of a conversation? Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Thank you, Melanie.
So for me and Chantel, I've only lived 2 places in Marin City and Novato.
Okay.
But I've lived in Sonoma County as well. So being in Marin, I know a lot of people. Being born and raised here. Marin City has, I left there when I was 8 years old, but I always still went to school in Sausalito, and I graduated from Tam High. So me and my brothers always still went that direction because my parents worked that direction. I don't really have those kind of ties here in Novato. All my friends are from there. So as far as connecting, what I do is, because I know so many people, is I just introduce people to other people. So for example, how I connected like Kamea with Marin City is through Performing Stars. So that's how we do community work. We give back to the community, and Marin City is my community. So, we do that. I just after Paul's presentation last week, there was Carla Halyard, who used to be a member for Kamea, and she wants very much to work directly with Paul and play Marin. So I actually kind of connected them. I don't know if you saw that, Paul, but it was like a little Facebook thing, like Paul meet Carla, Carla meet Paul. So it's kind of like, just kind of like word of mouth, or people just making the right connections and putting people in the right places for me.
It sounds very intentional though, not sort of happenstance per se.
Exactly, it is intentional. It isn't, yes. Because I'm making sure they're a good fit. I don't just introduce people to just anybody. And it's not just Kamea that works. Like when, we work with Felicia, I also try to get people from the other affinity groups. So people, MCOLA, I get, because Marin City is not just Black, there are, it's a diverse community now, whereas when I was growing up, it was mainly all Black. Yeah. So those are the kind of connections that I do. And it like you said, it is intentional. Yes. because my name is on the line.
We do all know you,
My
Melanie.
reputation.
You know, Paul, you're playing an interesting role in the pandemic. I mean, you were interested in health and young people and voice before, but during the pandemic, it looks like you're making different kinds of connections to help young people bridge to the future. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a little bit of everything, right? So when we talk about connections, it is who you know, but it's also, you got to be intentionally on who you get to know, right? Like, who are you going to let in your circle that's going, or in your network that's going to allow things to take place, right? I meet a lot of people all the time, and I'm not gonna lie, I categorize people just in general, of those that I want to bring into my inner circle that I know that will be able to feed into my life, right? So I could continue to feed into other people's lives. But in this pandemic, throughout and utilizing your network, you can go out and you could do different activities, right? Just within your network, you meet new people. You'd be like, oh, you want to take a group of kids surfing? I can make that happen. Or do you want to take a group of kids sailing? Well, let's make that happen. But then even if you go a little bit further, and as you start to intentionalize, make sure that kids have what they need. So if you have to open up a learning hub, you open up a learning hub, and then you look for help outside that way, right?
Could you say a little bit more about what the learning hubs are, just to make sure folks know?
Yes, in this pandemic, schools were not open. And so here in this community in Marin City, and like other communities throughout the nation, learning hubs popped up. Sometimes they popped up in people's homes. Sometimes they might pop up in an office building. But the one that Play Marin oversaw was held at the Marin City Rec Center, where we utilized the gym and the teen center for middle school age kids, as well as elementary age kids, to have a safe place to come and do their homework. Because we do have the internet, we provided them with lunch and snacks. So it was a place to come, but it also was an opportunity for kids to be able to socialize just a bit within this pandemic and not just be locked at home, where home life might not been the easiest place to learn. We was able to bring in support staff to help students with their work. And so Play Marin oversaw one for 7 weeks. I know currently you still have Bridge the Gap here in Marin City and the Hannah Project still running learning hubs for the high school age kids.
Thank you. Amber, you're doing a lot around wellness and young people, giving voice. Tell us a little bit about that, but how does the connection happen and how do you sustain it, right? Because there's the starting it, but then the keeping it.
I think that's a good one. I'm actually not at TAM anymore. I'm not.
Okay.
I left, but I'm still working in healthcare. I'm actually currently building programs for seniors and diabetics. I'm creating policy to get coverage for food, nutrition, and park activities to increase the health of people who are pre-diagnosed. So it's still wellness, it's still Black focused, but I've changed, but there is a way that wellness led into that, just like my work at the Marin City Health and Wellness Center previous to that led into wellness at TAM, the Teen Center, my work, my nonprofit where I took the young women to Africa. All of them have spoken to each other. One thing has all led to another. But I do have to admit, when I first moved to Marin, it was very hard to make connections for two reasons. Even though I had been back and forth here, since my father lives in Mill Valley and I also live in Mill Valley, I didn't know to go to Marin City. So I spent the first 10 years that I was here pretty isolated and not knowing where to go. And I did not find Mill Valley or some of the other areas to be very inviting. I wasn't comfortable in the cultures of the areas, so I just would go back and forth to the East Bay. And it was actually Felicia Gaston and Paul, who I was doing performance poetry in the East Bay, who invited me to come and teach a poetry class in Marin City at Bridge the Gap College Prep for a summer program. And at the time I wasn't teaching poetry, I was just performing it. So their ask though made me think, wow, like I love poetry, that saved my life. If I could create a curriculum that might support one young person and knowing what it took me a lifetime to figure out, maybe I can do that. So their ask expanded me. And then I created a curriculum and I went down there. Turns out I'm really good at it. Turns out I love it. I had not been on the track. I was in real estate. I wasn't thinking about working with youth. But them asking me gave me the opportunity to experience that I love it. And it's been on ever since. So even though I'm working right now in a field where I'm developing health, because that's a new love of mine, I stay working with young people in different capacities.
Mhm.
That's with Trap the Vote, the program that Paul and I have worked. I work closely with him for anything he needs. I have maintained a relationship with all of the babies that I've collected over the years. And now we're getting old enough to where they're old enough to where I'm supporting them and starting their own programs.
Yeah,
So I hope that answers your question.
absolutely. Sophia, I've seen so many interesting connections that you've made, voices of young people, with adults, holding adults accountable for things that we could all do better. Talk a little bit about what all of us should know and think about from your perspective about connections and hearing the voices of others.
Yeah, I think it's really important, especially regarding events going on in school districts right now. You know, there was the debates about SROs at Centerville High School and Novato High School with Police Free Schools Marin supporting that. There's the name change going on at Sir Francis Drake High School, which temporarily is named High School 1327 because it kind of became more general knowledge that Sir Francis Drake was actually a slave trader. And obviously, as a Black student who goes to that school, it was very disheartening to know that for, 4 years, I had been kind of like priding myself on being part of a school that's named after a slave trader. And I feel like a lot of times with not all adults, obviously, but with a lot of adults that work in these leadership positions that are primarily white, there's a lot of talking over the people that they're supposedly there to support. So there'll be a lot of discussion about, what Black students feel, how the Black community feels about certain subjects without really asking and without really connecting to those communities. So something that's been really important are these community input sessions, the few that the district has put on, so people from these communities can speak out and connect with the board members that are pretty much in charge of the district that either they're a part of or their kids are a part of. And it has shown many times to make a significant bigger impact, and people feel a lot more connected when they're hearing direct stories. One of the main reasons that Centerville High School ended up removing 2 of their SROs from their campus is because there were so many students of color coming forward and talking about their own personal experiences with SROs that were very negative. And
Sophia,
so,
SROs are school resource officers who are on-campus police, or how would you describe them?
yeah, so school resource officers, there's ones that are hired by the school, which means they're security. They're supposedly supposed to be there to help in case there's some emergency or in the worst scenario, a school shooting. But a lot of the times they've been shown to disproportionately target Black students for really minor offenses, which leads to them either getting suspended or a record, which can interfere with college and even put them, divert them onto the school to prison pipeline and get involved in a lot more serious infractions later in their lives. There's a report that came out that over 80% of all citations given in the Centerville School District were Latinx students, despite them only making up 60% of the school district. So it shows to be very present in Marin. And one of the board members very notably was saying, like, racism isn't a problem in Marin. This is not Chicago. We do not have this problem. And, if it was just those board members talking to each other like it so often is, that could have been the conclusion that was taken away from that board meeting. But all these really amazing students of color from Centerville High in that particular case saying, no, this isn't true. These are the things going on. We are more than a statistic. We are students being harmed. That really seem to connect with the viewers as well as a lot of the board members that seem to come away with a significantly better understanding of the issue present.
Yes, thank you. And I think you also touch on use the data. Like we might have these beliefs about this is happening or isn't happening or what's going well or not, but using the data and own voices, very important. You know, Noah, I know that a lot of the ways that you attract people across backgrounds to understanding and embracing is joy in general, your artistry, but also Black joy and Black history. How do you use your voice as an artist? Sophia was talking about using her voice as an activist. How do you use your voice as an artist to do that work? And then we'll turn to Otis to really talk about some of the things he's doing in the community in his current role to connect with young people about future. But how do you connect with history and joy and cross cultures and within the African American community? Noah.
Well, history is sort of my passion. I majored in history at Fisk. I was starting off to majoring in music, and an honors professor said you can't get a degree in music and automatically get a contract from Columbia Records. You might want to wind up majoring in something else and minoring in music. Although I was with the San Francisco Boys or the Jubilee Singers at Fisk, and we're going to be celebrating our 150th anniversary coming up in the fall here, which I hope to bring them to the Bay Area. But history has been a passion, and being able to speak before various groups on our history and on our background. Otis was nice enough to give me and Dan Daniels an opportunity to speak about history and civil rights with the DA's office and also with the probation office department, which was something that I appreciated. And kind of broadening out what the question that you asked, at the Lark Theater, I sit on the board there. Every year we give a gospel concert, and we bring folks over from Oakland to be able to spread the history of the gospel, the history of spirituals, et cetera. Pathway for Kids, I was working with them for a while. We took kids from Marin City to visit with the San Francisco Giants and to find out in the head office what opportunities were available and how they impacted the community. We also went to the head of the fire department there, opportunities that were available there, and also the weather person at Channel 7 gave us a tour and talked about what he had done. So it kind of cross permeates in the sense that the music is an opportunity to let people know what our history and culture and background is with that, and also and combine it with the history with the speeches that I'm able to give. Also at the Buck Family Fund, we were making certain that we had an African American woman on the board. I brought Elsia Gallowish, and we want to make that a permanent position. And it looks like Jonathan Logan from Marin City might be up for Tom Peters' position, so we're trying to work on pushing that as well. So it's a kind of a multi approach, and also with the America 250, they wanted initially just to be a celebration of what America has been over the last 250 years, and I'm making sure that it's a commemoration that we talk about the issues that African Americans have confronted and other people of color and still have to confront to make this a more perfect union. So it's not going to be the rah-rah kind of event that it was in 1976. We're going to make certain that we talk about the issues that have to have been overcome and still have to be overcome in the future. So thank you for the question.
Yeah. And Otis, you've been doing a lot, not simply as a prosecutor, though that's important work, but to weave together community and inspiration and future for young people as well as voice for adults. Talk about those connections and where you see them going.
Well, thank you, Chantel. To piggyback on what Noah just alluded to, is you have to cast your net of interest, your net of influence wide and deep. As I grew up in the South, I'm originally from Mississippi, and I grew up, on a farm. I'm a grandson of a sharecropper. And one thing my grandfather always said, when you cast your net in the pond, you cast it wide and deep. You get more fish that way. So when you look at life in Marin, you look at coming to Marin, as I did, I attended an all-Black elementary school through the 6th grade. I am one of the last students of the desegregation in the South in 1970, where they closed my all-Black school and they bused us 17 miles to the predominantly white school. And when I came to Marin, it was very interesting to see immediately that when someone tells you you can't and you will not, and that will never happen, you will not accomplish, you will not be accepted, you will not be received, you would not be respected or appreciated because you're not from that community. And that was told to me in 1986. I've been in this county 34 years. And you're going to find a hard time getting a job at the Civic Center because there's some controversial issue with Black people walking through the Marin County Civic Center. So when I came here as a law clerk, I found out I was one of the few Black students, law students, graduate to get an internship or a law clerk or legal assistant position here. And I worked with the county council. And one of the first persons I met in the Civic Center was Miss Betty Times from Marin City. And she embraced me and she whispered some words of wisdom and some interest and some words of what we call mother wit in our culture in the South, Chantel, telling me how to navigate my way through the Civic Center. And then I met the Honorable Retired Judge Bill Stevens. Then I met the Honorable, the late United States Marshal Glenn Robinson. And then I met Mr. Noah Griffin. And then I met Andrew Marshall. And I met a lot of people while I was living in Mill Valley off of Northern Avenue going off the shoreline. And so what I learned to do in the South is to look for my people first so I could find my safe place. And I look for those. And I look for mentors. And then when I moved from Mill Valley to Novato, I embraced and I looked for my people, the ones I could find who were much older than me, who can give me some words of wisdom. The Lois Moore and Terry Moore, Mr. Reverend Muse, Ms. Beverly Poole, the Concerned Parents of Novato organization. So in that spirit, when you talk about mentors, I had to make a decision on what I was going to do with my law career. And I chose specifically and intentionally to be a prosecutor, mainly because a lot of my people, our people, don't want to go into that business because they don't feel like, hey, why would I go to work with law enforcement and DA's office or probation officers? Because my people, our people, are seeing no justice, some justice, injustice, wannabe justice, justice all the time. Well, if you come from a part of the country of the United States where civil rights was born, as Noah is a historian will tell you, we are fighters. We are passionate people about life and existence. That's what I learned coming out of the South. When someone tells you you can't do something, that is more reason for you to say, oh, they're gonna think I can't do this. And I also learned as a child and a young man is that you can't always go to the table with your hands out. When you go to the table with your fists closed, it confuses people because they wonder why you're there. And I also learned that you have to want to try and want to be at the table of influence. So we need to be inside a building, outside a building, influencing opportunities in Novato, influencing opportunities in West Marin, Marin City, Sausalito, Tiburon, all over. So when I talk to the students, I use my same life experiences about me seeking mentors, and I seek to influence them about you have to really, really engage Marin County. The whole Marin County is your community, not just Marin City, not just Novato. This whole county is your community. And you need to make it known that you want to be appreciated and respected in this whole county on every level. So as an assistant DA, I realized that my role is very important, but I've also, with the support of the DA, Lord Fragoli, I'm the social justice, equity program, community outreach engagement person. That position never existed in the DA's office. I'm also the student internship and career development coordinator. And I'm also the director over the Victim Witness Advocate Program. So the reason I'm saying this to you in this way, kind of like in a passionate way, since I've been in this county, first time someone told me I can't do nothing, okay, now I have to show people how to use your education to then give back. I'm the president of the Marin Athletic Foundation, all 12 high schools. I'm involved with Rotary, and that's my passion for giving back to the community. Rotary theme is service above self. And I've been on the Marin Symphony board. I've been on a lot of leadership boards. You know why? I presume it because my people haven't been given those opportunities.
You know, Otis, as I hear you and I think about the work that you've done, it really calls out to me about there are networks within networks, networks of people with similar background, networks across backgrounds. And one of the things, because I have some connection and knowledge to everyone here, either through schools or through work or through communities, and many of us have had conversations, we all span boundaries. Tell me about spanning boundaries across race, across gender identity, and building those networks that over time help us build a better community. Because at the end of the day, to the extent that I know everyone here, see many of the names, people of multiple ethnicities who are the attendees, we're all working for a better community, but with different starting points. How do you build that cross connection? Sophia, why don't we start with you? Let's talk about spanning communities and influence leadership and navigation.
Yeah, well, to be honest, for the longest time was not involved in activism at all. I was considered what you call, quote, a whitewashed Black girl in Marin City. I didn't have a lot of Black friends. I didn't speak out on Black issues a lot of the time. And if it wasn't for some very strong, powerful activists in Marin County that reached out to me despite them maybe not reaching out if they wanted to stay within those boundaries, I may have not started in what I've been doing since then. And I think that one of the best things about working in Marin County is that there are so many different types of people here past race. There are some white people here that know about Black history better than I do. There are some white people that my grandma, who is from Mississippi, says very reminiscent of, when she was a little girl. It's a very diverse place, for lack of a better term. And there's people from many different levels of knowledge and starting. So I think it's really important to include all those people in the conversation, which is why when I started my group, Youth for Racial Equity, which is a group led by students to change policy and culture within school systems. It was not exclusively students of color that were included. It's not exclusively students who would have considered them activists before, because it's important to have all those different voices at the table to make it easier and more accessible to reach out to those people of power. The district at this point is used to hearing my voice at district meetings, but when you have, the captain of the baseball team saying that he also agrees, that might raise a few more eyebrows and be like, maybe this is not just this small group of people that believe in this. Maybe this is a larger thing that we should look into. And that may be an unfortunate truth about where we are as a community in Marin. But I also think it's important to understand that a lot of the misinformation and the lack of knowledge is based on ignorance and an ingrained system that doesn't teach about these issues. I didn't learn about a lot of these issues. I went to a small Catholic school in Fairfax and was not taught about race. I don't think I really knew I was Black until I went to a public middle school and they had a Civil War day and had Confederate flags hanging on the fences. And that's when I first was like, hey, this is not okay. It was not teachers teaching me, it was not community members teaching me necessarily. And it's really difficult in that sense to reach out to people when for so long they've been told that they are the default, that white is the default, and Black people are just supposed to accommodate to an already like centuries and centuries long culture that we've established. And it's hard for them to understand change a lot of the time. And I think when we completely cut people out of the conversation, which trust me, I've done my fair share of being like, no, there's no point in trying to reason with you. And sometimes there's not, but a lot of the times it's, reaching out and saying, why do you think this way? Why do you have this belief? And a lot of times when you allow people to kind of discover these facts that they may have not have been exposed to before, when you let them discover that themselves, sometimes it's a lot more impactful than trying to, directly teach someone or force someone, because I've learned that you can't force someone to want to change or want to learn, and that it's a gradual, lifelong journey to anti-racism.
So Sophia, thank you. That's a lot, both wisdom and action steps. So I just want to lift up some of the action steps for folks on this call who are thinking about, what are some interesting ways to contribute? I mean, you're talking about being an organizational leader, something you started, but also allies standing next to you and saying the same thing that you started with, and the influence of that. And also I hear you say meeting people where they are. So thank you for that. And Paul, you're an organizational leader also. Let's think about this influence leader role, boundary spanning leadership, and please do throw in some action steps for those who are thinking about what's a way to be an effective ally, partner, anti-racist maybe ally or partner in making change. What are some thoughts that you have?
Absolutely, right? We know that Marin has a lot of privilege, so you need to use it to make a difference, right? And we need to realize that. I believe in allyship, because it's going to take all of Marin to get on board to help change some of these systems that's broken. That's number one. I would love for the county board of supervisors to come out and blatantly say that racism is a disease, make a bold statement around racism. I haven't heard it, haven't seen it yet, and we need to really look at that. A lot of times I tell people to connect with organizations that's doing the work, right? Get behind them, really support them in the best way that they can, whether if it's finance or them writing letters, but you have the opportunity. There's enough organizations that's doing the work on the ground now that you could connect yourself with that can really help push their vision forward. So it is, because we know here in Marin County, we're, a very small percentage of people of color. And it will take a lot of other folks that live in Marin County to push the envelope forward as far as race, equity, and action. There's so many things. I'm always going to circle back to my community here in Marin City, which has been overlooked for so long. There's issues as far as housing that need to be addressed. There's issues as far as the environment that need to be addressed. There's issue around recreation and facilities. We live in one of the richest counties, if not the richest county in California. Why do Marin City still have a 74 or 75-year-old building that's supposed to function as their recreational facility? They don't have a field that kids could play on. So there's action steps that can be taken for communities that's been overlooked. So attach yourself to an organization and then figure out how to be involved and get the work done.
Attach yourself to an organization, speak up. And it sounds like speak with, not necessarily in front of, but speak with people of color who are leading and defining an agenda.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Amber, you've worked in large systems and you've run organizations and you've done individual work. Talk to us a little bit about influence leadership, crossing communities and building strength that way, especially with young people, which I know you've done a lot of.
Thank you. I think for me, and maybe not for everybody, a really big part of it is relationships. And that means time. And that doesn't always work in the bigger structures. I find that systems usually work on a clock. They're usually modulated to this, and that kind of repressive system makes it sometimes harder to create the change because people are operating in numbness. And so status quo makes it hard to shift things. But that's one of the things I loved about, because out of all of the places that I've worked, I think the place that I was the happiest was in Marin City. Paul and I used to have a thriving youth program down at the Marin City Teen Center. And I remember when we first opened up, I had one young man who used to come in every night and like help me sweep, but he was the only one. And I'd had TVs and all these programs, and we had all of these things there that we had set up for these kids, and no one was coming. And we just kept showing up, and it was just this one student. Then there were more students, and then they started talking about it. And then by the time we were closing it, which happened because of lack of resources and lack of support, we had 50 kids a night. And it was the relationships that we made with everybody who walked in the door that allowed us to create that. And in all programs, it's the slow building authentic relationships for me. That is what works for me, because it allows me to be in my value system so that I can be honest with my messaging. That works in Marin City, but I find that to be hard in other parts of the county, again, because of those bigger, rigid, kind of systematic and cultural repressive ways that don't allow for authentic value systems to be at the table, and aren't moving from that place. It's an illness. It's a part of white culture to protect status quo and protect rules that are old. And in that way, I have actually found it harder to make changes and to be an activist in those spaces. I actually struggle very much with crossing the lines. And that is something Paul is one of my happiness mentors. It's one of the things that he's working on me with. And part of it is because I'm ultra sensitive. And what happens when you are in a place that is really white and white people are not exposed to Black culture, they will accidentally hurt your feelings. They will accidentally be living in their superiority and say things that they don't intend to, but that are painful to me and to the people that I love. And it's this constant wrestling with whether I say something or whether I don't say something. And so I find it to be exhausting. And doesn't mean I don't do it, because I have a lot of white friends that I have made from overcoming that. But my preference is to be with people who I can just be in my isness. And that's going to be my brother Paul and a lot of my family in Marin City, where we can play board games and I can be Amber, and it doesn't have to be as heavy with all of this otherness that sometimes I feel when I'm in other parts of the county.
I have to say thank you for saying that, though, because there are challenges to this boundary crossing leadership, and speaking to it authentically is important, even while you do it, but speaking to the challenges of it are important. You know, Melanie and Noah, you both have been weavers in big systems of people together. Melanie in particular, inside the county organization for X number of years that you can share or not share with the group, but you've been here a little while. You've really connected our county organization with the community in very tangible, volunteer ways, joy ways, celebratory ways, and standing up for justice. And Noah, you've worked across systems, built a reputation as someone who can get hundreds of folks to come out and pay lots of money, or hundreds of folks to come out and just give their voice. I'd like each of you to talk a little bit about building those relationships and that momentum, keeping it grounded and making it relevant cross-culturally. Melanie, why don't you start?
Well, I guess mine started early. Oh, go, Melanie, I'm sorry, please.
Okay. I'm like, okay.
It's a good topic.
So, work is a great one, because what I do, I'm one of the first people every employee sees. So I'm one of the first people they meet. And that in itself creates a relationship, because I'm very genuine in who I am with that person. So like Amber was saying, you know, that's code switching, you know, which happens a lot. And I try not to do that, especially I don't do it when I'm with the employee. I meet them, I'm who I am, and it creates a relationship. And because I deal with all county employees, I can connect employees to other employees in other departments they may not have met, know existed. That is from like child support to maybe health and human services, just different things connecting people together. And then it bridges out from there. So then it's like, oh, well, we could do this. Like, and for example, Maria and her group who did our, the 3 therapists, that was a great way to connect right there. You know, that just happened by accident. But then it was like they wanted to be a panel and it worked out amazing. I mean, that was one of the best ones we've had. So it's connecting like that. And then and also like, you know, Marin City, it's making the connections, you know, knowing people. I want to get more people, Paul, work with you. So if you ever need volunteers, that sort of thing, let me know so I can reach out to the other affinity groups, because we do want to be out there in the community. It's not just all about connecting people within the county workforce. We want to go outside and branch out and give back in any way we can. So please reach out to us if you ever need assistance, just like that.
Melanie is the person, when she texts you and asks you to do something, you do it quickly and happily. So she's a good one to know to get volunteers. So Noah, you did start part of that conversation about how you do that building and how you constantly attract so many people who want to hear you professionally, personally, and advocate alongside of you. How do you do that?
Well, it's interesting how it started out. When my parents came out here in 1944, they bought a fourplex in the Fillmore district. They didn't like the schools. The schools were inferior, so we were the first Black family to move out to the Richmond district on the north end of the Golden Gate Park. And most of my friends were white, being the first Black family moving out there. And my mother said, "Get yourself some Black friends. Your little white friends are going to turn on you." So I can identify with Sophia. Well, I said, Greg Goodman, he's a buddy of mine. He's never going to turn on me. So I'm singing at his bar mitzvah, 1957 at Temple Emmanuel. And I hear these kids say, "Well, I'll see you at the party tonight." I said, "What do you mean a party tonight?" It took me 2 years to finally ask him what happened. His mother, who was kind of like a mother to me, I grew up in his house, it just isn't done. Think of how Noah would feel. Think of how the little boys and girls would feel with Noah there. He felt so badly about that. He went to Fisk for a year just to find out what it'd be like to be on the other side. And a lot of those kids had never met a white guy, nevertheless going to school with one. And it was a good cross-cultural arrangement there, just putting folks together. When I went to Harvard Law School, there were 22 African Americans out of 550. Well, although I was one of the founding members of the Harvard Black Law Students Association, I didn't eat at the black table, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because I thought, if I did that, how am I going to learn? How am I going to grow? So I felt like doing it, I did it. And when I didn't feel like doing it, I didn't do it. And I was kind of criticized on both sides. But right now, I have more friends and know more people in my class than any other African American knows in my class. And the person I've been able to support the most and publicizing, who did the most for our class and for the world, was Randall Robinson. They give awards to a guy that gave $2 or $3 million to the school after he graduated. Randall Robinson started the Trans-Africa movement that helped America divest from South Africa and change the whole apartheid system. And he never gets recognized for what he did. His brother was Max Robinson, who was the first Black anchor on ABC News. So building those relationships, getting that word out there. Now, when I have 4 children who all went through school in Marin County, except one went to high school someplace else, I had a 5-minute conversation with each of them at the Dipsy. Look, the reason you live where you live, you drink out of a water fountain that you drink out of, you take a book out of the library, somebody paid a price for you, and you're going to have to pay a price for somebody else. And each one of them has found their way. My daughter just left Nancy Pelosi's office, where she was the first Black press secretary to the Speaker of the House. When the stuff happened in Ferguson, she was there with hands up, don't shoot. I'm glad she didn't tell me until after the fact, because they had police ringing her. And the difference she was able to make in that office was fantastic. My son, who's the lawyer, works in a law firm here, big white law firm in San Francisco that's national. He wanted to see if they could put $100,000 into a Black bank down in Los Angeles. They wound up putting $2.5 million into that bank. My baby boy's working for, baby boy's 25 years old and 6'3". He's working for Peacock streaming services, where he makes a difference as to what they show. And then the older boy worked at Oracle and also at Salesforce, being the first in the areas that, so they're all making their difference in their own way. And hopefully setting an example helped do that. So
Noah, is there an action step for some of the folks who are here who are thinking, I love what you're saying, what do you want me to do, Noah? Like, what's a thing you would think
don't
of?
be afraid to join groups and organizations where you're the only one, where you don't have friends and allies, you're making a difference. There was a fellow that was clerk to the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco, whose boss went on to become head of the FBI. His boss started off in Kansas City in a smaller position. And he kept talking to this guy about race, talking to him about race. And he stopped one day because he thought he wasn't getting anywhere. And one of the other aides said, "You stopped talking to him, haven't you? You are really making a difference." So we all like to feel comfortable. We all don't want to get out of our comfort zone, but we need to get out of our comfort zone to get to know some of these people, listen to them. I don't know if you saw the Facebook post the other day. I don't know how many of your Facebook friends, but there's this one guy who was talking to this white supremacist racist who happened to be head of the Ku Klux Klan where he lived. And right now he has 22 Ku Klux Klan's outfits from people who left the Klan because they knew him as a person and they got out of it. And I'm not saying risk your life to go to make friends with somebody in a white supremacist group, but don't be afraid to speak your truth where you are and feel uncomfortable by joining groups that you might not otherwise join because you don't feel totally comforted and supported by the people that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So we have a question in the chat, or a comment really, that just talks about how important it is to get out of our comfort zones. You know, something that also I think moves us ahead is what inspires you. I know some of you may have inspirational quotes that you work with or other inspirational thoughts. What are some of the things that inspire you to keep moving? For some people, it could be their faith. For other people, their specific words. What are things that come up for you?
So Chantel, if I may, I want to address that point, but I want to comment on what Noah just left us with, and what Paul recognized or shown on his shirt of privilege, and what Sophia was talking about, what Amber was talking about. And it's a big deal right now to get out of your comfort zone, because we are a privileged people. I mean, our bloodline and our impact on the world stage is huge as African American or those of African descent. And we are a people that a lot of people want to model. They want our voices, they want our athletic abilities, they want our intelligence, they want to walk with us, they want to wear our clothes, they want to listen to our music. But what Noah just said is very important. And we were all raised this way. I was raised this way. One can ask, how do I come to Marin County and become the first Black president of the Marin County Bar Association? That's because I have no fear of representing who I am as a Black man. I have no apprehension of thinking outside the box. I don't think that anybody owe me anything. I know there's a disparity of income in Marin County. In Southern Marin and the Canal, the average income is around $40,000 a year for families, when the median income for Marin County is $120,000 a year. So when I get in there and I realize I have a blessed opportunity in this lifetime to leave something for Sophia or my kids or Gail's kids or Noah's kids or anyone's children, your children, Chantel, I want them to know that there's opportunities beyond your space right now, and you need to go get them. So when I mentor the students, I'm telling them that, you know what, Marin County got scholarships. Marin County got opportunities. We need to figure out how to get you there. And you find the ones in Southern Marin, but there are some that are given outside, like the Athletic Foundation. I started the Marin County Bar Legal Education Scholarship Fund. That was my brainchild. It started off with no scholarship. It's now at almost $175,000 headed toward an endowment. I set that up, and the first two recipients of the scholarship were two Black women. Okay, and I made sure that their scholarship was about diversity. The one was from Africa, and the other one is Jessica Shavers. They were the first two recipients to receive the Marin County Legal Education Scholarship Fund that helped jumpstart their law school and then get them active in Marin County. So what I'm saying is, what Noah is saying is very important in Marin County. We don't want anybody in this jurisdiction to think they owe us anything. We just want to know that poverty, health issues, housing discrimination, unemployment unequal opportunities. That is not normal in life. That is not fun to feel that way. So we have to be involved in everything. Noah has to be in his lane. I need to be in my lane. Paul need to be in his lane. Amber in her lane. Gail in her lane. So we can be active in every place. I need to be on the inside at the table where decisions are being made. That's my game. Okay, as Paul was saying, we need to be on the inside. I enjoy getting to the table, being uncomfortable, being the only Black man in the room, and listening to all the rules and policies. And if I think that the policy needs to change and make it equitable for everybody, I'm going to speak up. And next thing I know, the people in the room are saying, we like this guy. He needs to be president because he knows about moving forward. So I'm saying it's very passionate. You don't have to give ignorance any credibility. Ignorance will define itself. So those people don't understand our history. It's not your obligation to teach them our history. They need to get it for themselves. And if they're, as Sophia say, sometimes people don't understand her. So she said, I'm not gonna waste my time. This is a 17-year-old, 18-year-old young lady saying, I'm not gonna waste my time with those people who don't understand me. That's their problem. Okay, I got to go out here and be a young Black leader in Marin County. When I went to the Novato Youth Court and I saw Sophia sitting in the audience with her mother, I approached that young lady and I offered her an internship in my office. I didn't know her. I just saw that she was only one of 2 Black kids in the Novato Youth Court arena. I go, what's going on with this? So it's my obligation as a lawyer to say, hey, who are you? She lives in Strawberry. She said, I'm looking to do this. I said, you need to come to the DA's office and get an internship. So if someone, and as Paul, real quick, Paul applauded when Noah said that our brother Jonathan Logan is on track to pursue Dr. Tom Peters' job. Now, guess what's important there? It's important to have people on the inside at the influence table to make that happen, if that's an opportunity. So my passion is at this Civic Center to see people get economic job opportunities, get a part of some of these county entry-level jobs and internships, grow up into management, be a part of changing the equity lenses and making them wider, getting rid of this diversity of color, make sure diversity of opportunity and interest and influence applies to everybody, collaborating with all the affinity groups. But my biggest influence is on the outside. Rotary Club and all those organizations are very influential in this county. And you got to be a part of those stages. So I agree with what Melanie says and Paul. Everybody's right on point. But Noah Griffin hit the big mark today. We need to be active in all spaces and places in Marin County.
And that in itself is an inspiration.
Yes.
As we round on closing the panel, I'd love to leave people with things that inspire us and that might inspire them to work towards justice and connection and relationship. So is there, someone who'd like to leave us as we begin the closing process, which is a process, but as we begin the closing process, with something that is either an inspirational quote or an inspiration to you to push people forward?
Chantel, there is one question from ATN.
Oh, yes, experiences of racism. Do you, Melanie, want to talk about that and then leave us with an inspiration?
Sure, yes. So ATN's question, can you talk about experiences of racism that you personally went through in Marin? Well, I didn't go through any when I lived in Marin City. When I moved to Novato, my family was the second Black family on the street out of 75 families. So that was difficult. I never went to school in Novato, except for when I got in high school. I had to go to San Marin. That was the worst experience in my life. It's still the same today. It was very racist. Like I said, it hasn't changed today. My daughter went there. I had to pull her out after her first year because of racist things happening to her, things being stolen and, things happening on the basketball team. And, it was just a lot of hate. And also my daughter, when she was younger, she went to a private Christian school here in Novato. It's called Marin Christian Academy now. And she was maybe about 3 years old. And she was sitting in the living room. My mom, my parents were watching her. And she was playing with her doll, her baby doll. And she all of a sudden said, "Shut up, nigger baby." And my mom was like, "What did you just say?" And she thought she was in trouble. So she didn't want to repeat it. She said, "You're not in trouble, honey. You're not. What did you say?" And she said, "Shut up, nigger baby." And when I got home to pick her up, my parents told me, and I literally lost it. I lost it. Because you can do and say what you want to me, but when you start putting that towards kids, whether it's my kid or not, just like Amber and Paul, I'll go to bat for kids and the elderly. Those are two groups you don't mess with. And I let the school have it, and they wasn't aware. They didn't know where it came from, but I was like, you guys need to do some kind of education here because it came from some family. I don't know where, anything like that, but they were on it. My daughter continued, she graduated from there, 8th grade, but those were just a few. I've been called the N-word walking home from, San Marin High. And back then I was all about making a phone call, and my cousins from Marin City was up here ready to tear some stuff up. So, but things are changed now, I just had an experience 2 weeks ago, leaving my physical therapist. And a homeless guy came up and he was mad because I didn't pull right off. So he accused me of polluting the earth and killing him with my exhaust, which was not coming out. Then he goes on to call me a bee. Then he goes on to call me a nigger bee because I would not give him the time of day. And this was just 2 weeks ago. So I'm at this stage of my life, I could just ignore it. But again, when it comes to kids or the elderly, that they're off limits. So,
and Melanie, still you remain inspired. So as we come to a close, why don't you start us off with the
I was
closing
saying mine
inspiration?
is be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Simple.
Thank you. Who else has an inspiration as we move to our close? Because that was a powerful story of what we fight and what we endure. And then what inspires you to keep moving?
I can speak briefly just to a perspective, a context that racism is a disease. It's not personal, it is a disease. The concept of white supremacy that gives white people the idea that they are superior is something that was handed to them, that is a behavior of denial. And it's fixable. That's an inspiring quote.
Yeah.
And that it's important to fix it, not just because of our experiences, but it's actually for white experiences, that white people are the ones who are being cheated. For example, here in Marin, where we have the highest rate of drug and alcohol abuse by teens in the entire country. And that's a white issue, and it's not being addressed. And that's also in the same vein that is ignoring the racism, because the oppressive and repressive culture of whiteness is let's not talk about it. Let's sweep it under the rug and stay really close. So the disease is actually, it will benefit all of us. All of us, if we start having these conversations, addressing these issues and creating policy and laws that make it so that we can experience each other in a different way.
It inspires me when you say it is fixable, and it's not just fixable because or for Black people or for people of color, but for all of us, including white people. Thank you for that. Who else would like to say something? I see Otis, you're unmuted. Paul?
Yeah, I'm unmuted, but my sister Amber said it all.
That was excellent, yes.
I still feel like bold steps need to be taken, especially at the county level that oversees everything that we do here in Marin County. So I think we should all push forward, put some pressure on them to come out, make some bold statements around race and equity, and let's see where we can go from there.
Yeah, resources behind it. It can be done here.
Absolutely.
We are small enough, we are strong enough, we are smart enough. It can be done here. Otis?
Yes.
Will you share something with us about an inspiration?
I believe in the service above self. I think that's a big one of my big mottos. And we know that I was looking at one before we came on. Ayanna Presley said, we must acknowledge that issues like systemic racism, economic inequality, and the achievement gap are the result of man-made and woman-made policies.
If we made it, we should be able to fix it.
The worst form of inequality is to try to make unequal things equal.
Yes, thank you. Noah.
I like a quote that my father used to speak to me about all the time, James Russell Lowell. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet his truth alone is strong. Though her portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong, yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadows, keeping watch above his own. New occasions teach new duties. Time makes ancient good uncouth. They must ever up and onward who would keep abreast of truth.
Thank you. This is being recorded. I want to write some of these down, some of the sentiments. So,
that was
Sophia.
from James Russell Lowell's The Present Crisis, from which Du Bois took the name of that for the NAACP's magazine. I'm sorry for taking
No, that was great. Thank you. Sophia, what do you think? Inspirational idea or an inspirational quote?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a quote that would, stand up to everything that has been said previously, but I just think that one of the biggest things that has helped me get through, 18 years of growing up in Marin County and only recently really being comfortable in my own identity is remembering where you came from and being okay with sharing that. Like, no matter where you are in life, there are going to be people that don't like you for how you look. And that's a really difficult thing to accept. It's something hard at any age, I feel, to accept that people and systems will discriminate against you based on things you cannot change. But for that reason, there's really no reason to hide who you are. And that's something I think past race, sexuality, gender, age, anything, I think it's something really important to remember.
Yeah, thank you so much. And there's more conversation that we can have. And someone actually put in the chat, it may have been Marlon, who said, we should do this more often, have these conversations, offer opportunities for action, really think about inspiration and how we keep moving forward the issues, keep ourselves moving. I think for me, an inspiration and an inspirational quote is being raised in Louisiana. One of the things that I was raised with was so many people work so hard for every opportunity that I have. Take none of them for granted and make sure that you're supporting other people to do well and to do better. So on that, I want to thank all of you who came. I want to thank you for the comments and the questions. Thank you for joining COMEA, the County of Marin African American Employee Association. Thank you for joining the library. Thank you, colleagues and friends, for sharing yourselves. I hope all of you who were here heard a prompt towards action, towards connectedness, towards navigating these systems, crushing these systems together that are inequitable and inappropriate. I want to thank my very close colleagues, Eva Patterson, who put this panel together, yay! And Etienne Douglas and Ramona Little Taylor. There's lots of stuff happening in the background to make this fun and interesting. And thank all the panelists for agreeing. I wish we could have been in one room and maybe sitting on sofas having a conversation, but this worked really well. So thank you for being here. You are appreciated.
And thank you, Chantel, for heading up the panel discussion.
Thank you, Noah. Thank
You're a
you.
great
For the
moderator.
appreciation. Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful night. I hope to see you again in programs and connected and, post-COVID all together hanging out. Thank you and good night.